Hey guys, Drunken Headshot here. In this guide, I'm going to cover some Jedi Sage balance discipline, and it's just going to be mainly the basics, the introductory guide. And from here on out, I'm going to be doing introductory guides. I know I stuck the PvP in the past, but it's going to be PvE and PvP related. So, if you want to see more advanced guides or guides on different classes, give me a heads up in the comments below, and I can try to put that out there for you. But without further ado, let's get to it. So let's start off with some combat proficiencies. I just want to go over this pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot to go over, and I'm going to go over some utility points as well. But let's start off with abilities. There's some new abilities here. We got Vanquish, which is like the upgraded form of Mind Crush. Does kinetic damage instantly and then does some damage over time for 9 seconds. It also makes your target vulnerable, and all force attacks do 5% more damage. We have Disturbance, which is just a burst kinetic ability. Force Imbalance, which is an AoE and internal damage, and also redistributes life. Basically a life steal for 10% of the damage dealt. Hits 8 targets in a 5-meter radius. Telekinetic Throw, Weaken Mind, and Sever Force, which these are just dot abilities for internal damage. And if you don't know what internal damage is, what it is that it's the one damage that ignores all armor. So it doesn't matter how much armor they have or defense, it's just going to be completely it's going to deal the true damage basically. Sever Force is it also immobilizes the target for 2 seconds. Very cool, and you can only trigger every 9 seconds. We have Force Serenity, also redistribute life ability that does internal damage. It's a burst damage ability and redistributes life for 50%. Very nice. So we got Force and Balance. We went over that AoE we have. Telekinetic Balance, which makes your telekinetic throw have no cooldown, which is really cool. You're going to use that ability a lot. And it's more of a utility ability, and I'll explain why as we go. Psychic Barrier reduces... okay, so don't worry about that top part, but in it, it says your telekinetic throw will actually recover 1% of your total force. So you have ways of getting your force back. Force Imbalance now suppresses resistance to the force, increasing the amount of damage that the target suffers from next 15 periodic damage abilities for 10 seconds, or 10%, last 30 seconds. So what this does is actually throw 15 stacks on your enemies, and for each stack that you consume, it'll do 10% more damage to those abilities. Presence of Mind, when you use your telekinetic throw, it'll channel, and it'll gain 4 stacks over time, and your Disturbance and Vanquish will be able to be used instantly, consuming 50% less force and dealing 25% more damage. Really cool. We went over Sever Force. Abundant Justice, very good to keep in mind. This ability here, this passive, and what it does is when your Force Imbalance hits, or whenever you put Weaken Mind and Sever Force on an enemy, once you use Force and Balance, every enemy that is hit by that Force and Balance now has Weaken Mind and Sever Force. It spreads. It's really cool. So this will allow you to do so much more AoE damage just by comboing your abilities correctly. And then also it says Force Imbalance overwhelms your targets for 45 seconds. Targets, hear you. It's all the targets. And all those overwhelmed targets take 10% more damage from area attacks. So if you wanted to go with like Tectonic Mastery for Force Quake, you can actually do a lot more damage with Force Quake, just 10% more damage with Force Quake. Kind of like if you were to go Force with that in telekinetics as well. But this is your 10% more damage from area attacks. So increase critical chance, Force Serenity, Disturbance by 5%. And then you have, or that's critical chance, yeah. And then increase periodic damage by 10%. Those are just 2 good passives there. We have Rippling Force, which allows your telekinetic throw and your Force Serenity to restore force back to you, and also deal kinetic damage to the target. We have Sever Force Serenity, we went over that there. Mind Warp increases the duration of your Vanquish, which is this ability here. Mind Scarring, or Mental Scarring, same thing, increases the damage of your periodic effects by 15% on targets that are low health, 30% or less. And also Force Serenity restores some force back to you for every stack that you use of Force Suppression, which is, like I said, this Force Imbalance throws Force Suppression on the enemy. 15 stacks. So Focused Insight increases the life stolen from Force Imbalance and Force Serenity, and also causes your Weakened Mind and Sever Force to get some life back as well. So you're getting more life steal from all your stuff, from all your abilities. Really cool. Psychic Projection. Telekinetic throw channels faster, but also deals 25% less damage. That's what I was saying. It's more of an utility ability, not so much of a damage ability. It does damage, don't get me wrong, but it's more of a utility ability, and you'll see why. I'll show you. Mind's Eye. It says Force Serenity deals 25% more damage when used on targets that are affected by your Weakened Mind. So you definitely want to use Weakened Mind first, and then Force Serenity right here, and then this, because that means Force Serenity will do more damage. 25% more damage. That's a lot. That's a quarter of the more damage. So, and each charge of Force Suppression that is consumed, you gain more force back. So you're not burning through your force so fast. Okay, Psychokinetic Torrent increases your crit chance basically by using your telekinetic throw, and it stacks up to 4 times, which 2 times 4 equals 8. So we got 8% extra crit chance from our telekinetic throw, and that's one of the other reasons I was talking about how telekinetic throw is more of a utility ability. It really does help you increase your damage and productivity in this discipline. Resonant Pulse. Targets hit by Force Imbalance have 50% chance to emit Resonant Pulse, damaging up to 7 targets within 5 meters, does internal damage. So this ability has like a flip of a coin chance of doing more damage. Really cool. So that's it for these proficiencies. Let me go over utilities real quick. I just want to explain something. Some of these are going to look different from my telekinetic video, and honestly I'm thinking about making a new telekinetic video maybe as soon as the next patch releases or something, when something changes, because I'm doing things a little bit differently on my telekinetics that I found to work very well. So we have Jedi Resistance and Pain Bearer. Now think about this, it does not affect redistributed life. That's all of your abilities, you know, life steal as I like to call it. It doesn't help you with that. But the reason I go with it is because even with all that redistributed life, you still have some survivability issues from what I've seen. There's no damage reduction. It's all about being able to heal yourself. You don't have the damage reduction that you get in telekinetics. And your survivability and mobility in this case isn't as good as you would have in telekinetics as well. So I go with this because if I have a healer on my team in PvE or PvP, I want to get healed more. So, but you could also go Tectonic Mastery, like I said, because you can have 10% more damage when your targets are overwhelmed. You have a lot of AoEs as it is. Forcequake, you really can't fit that into your rotation, but if you could, you can increase the damage by 25% there. Mind Ward reduces the damage taken by periodic effects by 15%. You want that. Now I like to go with Confound. The reason I do is because, like I said, when you have Weakened Minds on all your enemies, like 8 enemies, and you use Force, or if you use Weakened Mind on one person, you use Force Imbalance, it just gives it to all the enemies, and I'm like, okay, now I just slowed all of them by 30%, and that's pretty productive right there. So, but you could go with telekinetic defense instead. That's personal choice. If you want to do that, that's up to you. Mental defense, really good to have. And then I've actually started going metaphysical alacrity, and this is very good. And I honestly think this is so much better than Kinetic Collapse. Kinetic Collapse blinds the enemies, and I've never really seen anything happen from this. It just looks flashy, and I've never actually seen this work efficiently at all. This, on the other hand, Metaphysical Alacrity, reduces the cooldown of your Force Speed, Force Slow, and Force Barrier. And it also increases, what is it, Force Speed duration, and your Mental Alacrity increases your movement speed for its duration. And the active cooldown of Force Speed is finished when Force Barrier ends. So if you're in PvP and you use Force Barrier, you don't have to worry about if your Force Speed is on cooldown, you can just, it's going to be up the moment your Force Barrier is over with. So very good for PvP. I've actually found this very useful in PvE with Sage Telekinetics. Very useful. So up to you, but that's what I go with. And then I go with these two, Force Mobility and Valorous Spirit. Valorous Spirit because Force Mend. If you're using Force Mend, that means you're getting attacked or focused, and you want some damage reduction there. Force Mobility, you need that with Force Serenity. It's very helpful. Now, if you're in PvE, you can make some changes, but in PvE, if you're in PvE, you can make changes, but in PvP, you definitely want this above all. So that's it for combat proficiencies. So yeah, let's jump into some rotations and some other stuff. Hey guys, thanks for sticking with me this long. Let's jump into some rotations, and I like to tell people this, when it comes to rotations, you don't have to do it exactly in order every time. It is recommended to do it in order to get the most damage out of it, but I like to say, use it when it's up. If it's up and nothing else is, and you have a chance to use it, use it. Unless you want to be sparing with your, like, let's say your Force and Balance, you want to wait just a little bit before you get more people or ads in that group, so you can spread Weaken Mind and Sever Force to all those enemies. That's when I'd be like, yeah, be sparing to your Force and Balance, so that way you can get more damage in the long run. So there's a couple different rotations, and it all really starts differently, and that's all. Oh, that's the only difference, is that it starts differently. If you're fighting a single target, I recommend going with Force and Balance first. And the reason you want to go with Force and Balance first is so you can get Force Suppression. Those 15 stacks will allow your periodic damage to do more damage, 15% more damage to your target. So that's if you're going against single target. If you're going against multiple targets, let's say you got a group of ads and you're in an ops or something like that, or in PvP, you want to start it differently. You don't want to start with Force and Balance. You want to end it with Force and Balance, and I'll show you why. So when you start your rotation, let's say we're going against a single target, I'll use Force and Balance, and then I'll use Telekinetic Throw to channel and use my Vanquish, and then I'll just go along with the rotation. So Force and Balance, Telekinetic Throw, Vanquish should be able to use instantly, does more damage. I use those two abilities, Force Serenity, and then Force and Balance again. Telekinetic Throw, Vanquish, and then I can rinse and repeat, right? Just like that. You can actually use Disturbance if it's not up yet. And then I would say just use Telekinetic Throw. If you're ever going to use your Vanquish, you always want to use Telekinetic Throw for it to be used instantly. The reason being, Vanquish will do 25% more damage when you use Telekinetic Throw first. So I've seen some guides where they say, long channel Vanquish first. That's how you start out your combos, so that way you can get the 5% more damage on your target. No, that's some old stuff. You want to use Force and Balance first if it's single targets. That way you get those 15 stacks of Force Suppression. You want to use Telekinetic Throw, so that way you get that critical chance increase. See how everything's critically hitting here. You see that? Or not everything, but you're getting more critical hits. You got Weaken Mind, Sever Force, and these are all doing more damage because of your Force Suppression. And then you have when it comes to Force Serenity, You want Force Potency because it's not a periodic damage ability, and the only way you're going to do more damage with that is if you use Force Potency. You have Force Potency up still for your Force Imbalance, and that just, it makes it so much easier. So that's pretty much it though for the combo. If you're dealing with a group of enemies, like I said, Force Imbalance, you want to use that last. I would start off, let's say I'm going against a group of enemies. My AoE is not going to happen till the end, but it's going to go quick. I use Telekinetic Throw, Vanquish, Weaken Minds, Sever Force. I use Mental Alacrity and Force Potency if they're both up. And then once I use Force Imbalance, it's going to affect all those enemies. I'm going to have Weaken Mind and Sever Force completely refreshed on those enemies. And then I only have to do this for that one target to keep it up. But that's it for the rotation. There really isn't much to it other than that. And if you missed a couple things, go ahead and go back and you'll see exactly the rotation that I went through. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for me or anything that you think that I could have added on to this guide, please let me know in the comments below. Just one more thing before I end this video. I just wanted to say it's been great making videos for you guys on YouTube. And you might actually see that this video is cut short. I cut the PvP footage out of my guides, and I'm actually going to be doing that from now on. But if you do like the PvP footage at the end of my guides, and you want to see that again, just let me know in the comments, and I can bring that back for you. But I guess I'll be seeing you on my next video. If you like what you see, you like and sub, and show me your support, and I'll catch you next time.